Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you've ever had a neighbor who just can't stand a little peace and melody, or you've been told your home is too noisy for the neighborhood, you're going to love today's story. This one is for anyone who's ever wanted to stand up for themselves, get a little creative, and maybe have a little fun with the rules. So grab your favorite snack, get comfy, and let me tell you how my simple wind chimes turned into a neighborhood legend, thanks to a 10-foot gong and one very persistent Karen. Have you ever tried to bring a little calm to your space, only to have someone complain about it? That was me, just trying to enjoy the gentle sound of wind chimes when suddenly I became public enemy number one. But instead of backing down, I decided to take things to a whole new level. And trust me, the results were louder and funnier than anyone expected. But before we get into the story, let me take a moment to wish something special for you. If you're watching this, I want to say a quick prayer for you and your loved ones. May your days be filled with peace, your nights with restful sleep, and may you always have the courage to stand up for your happiness no matter who tries to silence your joy. Amen. All right, let's set the scene. I live in a neighborhood where everyone seems to have an opinion about everything. Lawns, mailboxes, even the color of your front door. There's always someone ready to weigh in. But the real star of our show is Karen, the self-appointed noise monitor. She's the type who calls the HOA if your dog barks twice or if your lawnmower is too loud on a Saturday morning. Now, I'm not a troublemaker. I keep my yard tidy, my music low, and my parties small, but I do love a little ambience. So when I found a beautiful set of wind chimes at a local craft fair, handmade, tuned to a peaceful scale, I thought, why not add a little music to my mornings? I hung them on my porch, and every time the breeze picked up, they played the most soothing melody. Inciting incident 2:45 to 3:45. The chimes had barely been up a week when I got my first visit from Karen. She marched up to my door, arms crossed, and said, "Your wind chimes are keeping me up at night. Some of us need our rest." I apologized, promised to bring them in at night, and thought that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. The next day, I found a note in my mailbox. "Your wind chimes are a nuisance. Please remove them immediately." Then came the official HOA notice, "Noise complaint. Please ensure all outdoor decorations comply with community standards." I checked the rules. Nothing about wind chimes, just a vague line about excessive noise. At first, I considered just taking the chimes down. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't about noise. It was about control. Karen didn't want wind chimes, so nobody could have wind chimes. That's when I decided if I was going to get in trouble, I might as well make it memorable. I started researching the loudest, most dramatic outdoor instruments I could find. That's when I stumbled on the idea of a gong. Not just any gong, a massive, 10-foot ceremonial gong, the kind you see in temples or at the start of epic sporting events. I found a local metal artist who was up for the challenge, and together we designed the ultimate statement piece. The next few weeks were a blur of planning, welding, and anticipation. The artist delivered the gong on a flatbed truck, and with the help of a few friends, we installed it right in my front yard. It was a work of art, polished bronze, intricate carvings, and a mallet the size of a baseball bat. I set it up on a sturdy frame, surrounded by a little Zen garden for extra flair. Neighbors started to notice. Some stopped to watch, others just shook their heads and laughed. A few even asked if they could try it out. But I knew the real reaction would come from Karen. The morning after the installation, I waited on my porch, coffee in hand. Right on cue, Karen came marching down the sidewalk, eyes wide, mouth open. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw the gong. For a moment, I thought she might actually faint. She stormed up to my porch, waving her latest HOA notice. "This is outrageous. You can't possibly think this is acceptable." I smiled and said, "Well, you said the wind chimes were too much. I figured I'd try something a little more resonant." She sputtered, "This is a violation of every standard we have." I replied, "Actually, the rules just say no excessive noise. The gong is purely decorative, unless you want to hear it." Pause. Have you ever done something just to prove a point? Or had a neighbor who just couldn't handle your style? Drop your story in the comments or just type Team Gong if you're all about making some noise. And if you're enjoying this, hit that like button so we can keep the good vibes ringing. Karen was not amused. She called an emergency HOA meeting. Flyers went out, emails were sent, and soon the whole neighborhood was buzzing. Some people were outraged, others were secretly delighted. The meeting was packed. Karen stood at the front, waving photos of my gong like she was presenting evidence in a crime trial. She demanded that the HOA force me to remove it. But when the board reviewed the rules, they realized there was no specific ban on gongs or wind chimes. The rules were vague, and I'd technically followed the process for submitting a new yard feature. The board was split. Some thought the gong was a bit much, but others argued it was time to update the rules and let people express themselves. While the HOA deliberated, something amazing happened. My gong became a local landmark. People started taking selfies in front of it. Kids loved the idea. A few neighbors even asked for the artist's contact info so they could add their own statement pieces. Someone left a bouquet of flowers at the base of the gong with a note. "Thanks for making the neighborhood more interesting." Even the local paper got wind of the story. They ran a piece called "The Gong That Rang in a New Era." Suddenly, my house was famous. People drove by just to see the gong. Some even brought their friends for gong photos. A week later, the HOA called me in. The president said, "We've never had a situation like this before. While your gong is unique, you did follow the rules. We're going to allow it, but we'll be updating the guidelines for future projects." Karen was furious, but the board's hands were tied. The 10-foot gong was here to stay. And here's the best part. The HOA decided to let homeowners vote on new yard feature options. Suddenly, the neighborhood was full of creativity. Sculptures, fountains, even a few new wind chimes. The whole street looked brighter, happier, and a lot less like a row of cookie-cutter houses. Karen, well, she still walks by every day, arms crossed, lips pursed. But now she's surrounded by a neighborhood that's a little more open-minded. She never said another word about my gong. In fact, I caught her grandkids taking selfies in front of it last week. Maybe, just maybe, she's starting to see the fun in a little noise. As for me, I love my gong. Every time the wind catches it just right, it lets out a deep, resonant tone that echoes through the block. It's a daily reminder that sometimes the best way to deal with criticism is to make a little more noise. So what's the lesson here? Don't let anyone silence your joy. If someone tells you to quiet down, ring out even louder. Stand your ground, know your rights, and remember that your home is your sanctuary. Life's too short for silence. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend who needs a little inspiration. And remember, may your days be peaceful, your neighbors be kind, and your joy never be silenced. Stay resonant, everyone.